some boo-hoo blues, but I stand here and repeat it. I'm a rocker. Everybody hear me now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. We have the format and the opportunity to discuss some breaking news here on Source Material. And granted, I don't do that a whole lot, but there are some times where something hits the comic book world, and I feel that we've got to talk about it. Here's the thing. November 7th hit. I'm perusing through my social medias, as I usually do, and I see there's a local DC writer here in my town. Oh, well, I say in the mid-Ohio Valley. Okay, he's right across the river. I think his quote was something like, "I had to look twice because I thought this was an April Fool's joke." Yeah, this was something where you're like, "Oh, bull crap," and then you check it again, and you're like, "Okay." Now this is one of those things where you're like, "Okay, I kind of verified it, but now I need to go to a different source." Because I almost don't want to trust this. I don't know if this news is right. And you go to a different source, and you sure enough, you verify what this crazy earth-shattering news is. And like I said, here on Source Material, I can remember when we talked about the whole Secret Wars pizza discussion. How many years ago was that? Like 2 or 3 years ago when Secret Wars hit. And we had to discuss it. It was. Well, so I read the news and I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty crazy. I sit back, I work for a little while, and then a good buddy of the show, his name's Josh Calandris, and he's on here with us tonight. How you doing, Josh?
Doing well.
Doing well. He sends me a message. I believe it was via Twitter. He's like, I can't even remember what you said. I know it probably had an expletive. It had an expletive, I'm sure. Holy shit. And I was like, wow, yeah, this is pretty crazy.
I can't remember who I originally saw it from, but it was somebody that had retweeted DC's announcement. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, I mean, if it's coming from DC, it doesn't sound like something they'd want to joke around about.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think an hour or so had passed. And another friend of the show and current guest tonight, Benjamin J. Colon, sent me a message and said, are you doing a show about this news? And I said, I think there might be some interest in it. I think we might. How you doing tonight, Benjamin J. Colon, by the way?
I'm doing good. I got a 3-day weekend ahead of me, so
jam.
That's right. That is right. So, okay. And then Ronnie Adams, I got to bring you on here. How you doing, Ronnie?
I'm good, man. How are you?
You've got an opinion on this thing.
I got lots of opinions.
All right. So let's talk. Let me read the tweet. All right. This is the tweet from DC. It's specifically, I'm quoting it right here from Twitter. "We are beyond thrilled to welcome Brian Michael Bendis exclusively to the DC family with a multi-year, multifaceted deal. He's one of the premier writers in the industry, having created so many unforgettable stories wherever he's been, and we can't wait to see what he has planned for the DC universe. We are so excited to start working with Brian Michael Bendis." All right. Now, I think the way that I'm going to try and structure this is at least kind of give a history of a leading up kind of to, up to about November 7th, according to Wikipedia and some other sources that I grabbed from, who Brian Michael Bendis is. You may be sitting there going, well, who is this guy? I've never heard of him. Well, that's fine. Maybe you don't.
Living under a rock?
Maybe you don't read comics. Maybe you shouldn't listen to this show.
Loser.
But no, this is a prolific writer, and it has pretty much been exclusively Marvel, okay? If you pick up a Brian Michael Bendis authored book in the last 17 years, it's most likely going to have Marvel on the cover as well. So now there are some independent books that he's had his hand in. I do want to say that we have a list. And Benjamin J. Colon has got a list of everything that he's worked on since is it from the beginning or just from Marvel, did you say, Benjamin?
The list I have is stuff that he worked on at Marvel. That would include Powers, because technically Powers was something that he started at Image but brought to Marvel after Joe Quesada basically created like a separate creator-owned, subdivision, almost specifically so that Bendis could bring powers from Image to Marvel. Aside from that, this is all like Marvel stuff that he's done. This is not I don't think this is a complete and comprehensive list. This is everything that I could find in, on short notice, but it's a pretty long list regardless. It's not in any particular order, but
okay. All right. Well, hold on to that real quick. I want to go real quick around the table here and just ask one question before we get to a lot of the stuff from Marvel here. Josh, I mean, you were the first to kind of contact me and say that this was something that obviously hit your radar. Do you know or have you read anything independent-wise from Brian Michael Bendis?
I want to say I have a couple volumes of Power.
Okay.
And kind of looking around at his bibliography today, I mean, there's really not a lot beyond Powers. It looks like he did something on Image called Sam and Twitch before that.
Do you know much about Sam and Twitch?
I know nothing about Sam and Twitch.
Okay. Then have you read much Spawn?
It's been a long time, but yeah, it looks like he wrote like a 10-issue series for Spawn, Hellspawn.
Yeah, Sam and Twitch, I believe, were the detectives.
Yeah, they were the partners that were hunting down Spawn, or
yeah.
It looks like he did that Hellspawn series. Ashley Wood did the art for that. I need to go back and check that out because Ashley Wood's art's awesome.
Holding it in my hand right now.
That's all. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
So you think it was Powers that you might have seen? How about you, Ronnie? Did you pick up any Brian Michael Bendis before he became huge when he hit Marvel?
Yeah, he started picking up. Mostly, I just read him in Marvel.
Okay,
but I started noticing him while in Marvel, while he was at Marvel. But I know he wrote Scarlet. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote that, and I tried to read that, but I didn't get to it, which is sad to say. I think that was a creator-owned title. I know he wrote Sam and Twitch, but mostly I stuck with read a little bit of Powers, but I stuck with mostly the Marvel series.
Okay. All right, Benjamin J. Cologne. How about you, man? Did he pop up at all before he went into Marvel for you?
He did actually. Because I was a big Spawn fan, in the 90s and around 2000. That's actually my first exposure to Brian Michael Bendis was Hellspawn, which was, looking back, he kind of did his best with it, but I don't think it was really at the time in his wheelhouse. He was a crime writer, and his his bread and butter back in the days was true crime stories and sort of horror stuff. And he actually got better at doing horror, and ironically enough, he got better at doing horror in Ultimate Spider-Man, which I'll probably get into later. But Hellspawn was kind of early on, and the art was great, but it didn't really I don't think it did kind of everything that he wanted it to do. But that was kind of where he first got on Marvel's radar, was through Hellspawn and then through Sam and Twitch. Sam and Twitch was the first book that he collaborated with Alex Maleev, who he worked with on throughout Daredevil.
Oh, yeah. That was one of the things I picked out through the wiki history was, he began work with Caliber Comics, made a lot of associates and colleagues doing that, including one Mike Oming, which we just I think spoke about here when we talked about Thor Ragnarok earlier this week. But then he gets picked up by Image Comics, and then Todd McFarlane sees some of the work that he's done and says, "Hey, why don't you do Sam and Twitch?" And that's in 1990. That was 96, 97, and 98. That's when Powers comes into play. It's not too long after that he gets noticed and Marvel brings him into the fold. All right. Now, easy question here. I'll throw this at Josh as a softball. All right. We'll see. He goes to Marvel. What is the one title that you read or at least noticed Brian Michael Bendis on first?
Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah, I kind of figured. Ronnie, are you the same way?
Yeah.
Okay, and Benjamin. Go ahead, Ronnie.
That's when I knew his name, but I started really noticing him with Ultimate Spider-Man, and then I just started picking up everything he was a part of or trying to. But yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man.
Benjamin, same thing or anything different there when he hits Marvel?
Short answer is hell yes. If you want the long, let me know when you want the long answer.
I was, again, going through the wiki, and they said that this was Quesada brings him in, okay? I mean, they gave him the reins to a property and said, hey, we're starting everything from scratch with Spider-Man. Do you want it? And, I mean, who wouldn't want the opportunity to write that book?
They kind of did him like they did Favreau.
Okay, explain.
Favreau, they handed Jon Favreau the very first Marvel Universe movie that said, "Don't screw this up." And
here's the thing about Ultimate Spider-Man and the Ultimate Universe in general: like it overachieved like crazy because the story with Ultimate Spider-Man and Mark Bagley talks about this a lot too is that they didn't expect it to go past 6 issues.
It was so good.
A big old experiment, but it was so good, and everybody loved it so much that they just kept going with it, and then they built a whole.
And then Ultimatum happened.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
He started with Ultimate Spider-Man, but he also was doing a Daredevil 3-issue limited series from day one at Marvel too.
Yeah.
The Daredevil Ninja.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Well, they had said that, just like to echo what you were saying, Benjamin, it did so well that it was actually surpassing the Amazing Spider-Man mainstream title.
At the time, this was very Ultimate Spider-Man came out a little bit before they did before J. Michael Straczynski came on Amazing Spider-Man. Believe me, I know this period of time very well. So yeah, at the time, Amazing Spider-Man sucked.
Oh, wow.
Right before JMS came aboard and made a lot of the sweeping changes that he made. So, but within a couple of months of each other, you had 2 really, really just high quality Spider-Man books. Yeah, I look back on that very fondly. That was like, that was my best time as a Spider-Man fan.
Well, as a footnote as well, in 2001, he's also helping out with the Max series, which he begins writing Alias.
Mm-hmm. It's a good read, man.
Ladies
and
gentlemen, Jessica Jones. If you've watched that on Netflix, I think you have Brian Michael Bendis to thank for what we, at least that iteration of Jessica Jones. Was she a character prior to Alias that he molded, or did he create her? Do you guys know?
Created her straight up.
Okay.
Oh, really? For that title?
Oh yeah.
I didn't realize that. Oh my god.
He tried, like, he kind of worked backwards to kind of like work her into the into some of the history of the Marvel universe, but that was his doing.
No kidding.
Wow, he did really well because I didn't realize that he created her.
Oh, yeah.
That's 2001.
Good night for me, guys.
Well, you look at Brian Michael Bendis's his influence on the Marvel Universe, and we're going to hit that list here in just a second, but I do want to talk about, the events that he's had his hands in recently. Well, I would say recently. I mean, throughout at least the 2000s. I mean, this guy had his name on many of the big events that happened in Marvel continuity throughout that time. And so he molded. I remember in the TED Talk I was watching, he said, "Yeah, I'm responsible for a lot of events that make many comic book readers mad." Now, back then, when you were enjoying these things, you didn't realize how tired the whole comic event would be after a while. But the thing is that if it's written well, okay, great, we're on board.
In my opinion, a lot of the reason that I got back into comics and stuck with it, because the first comic that I started regularly buying again was Ultimate Spider-Man, and the first one that I bought was August 2001. That's kind of whenever I started. I just moved to Huntington. I just started going to college, and I had exposure to an actual comic shop down the road, and so that was possible, and that's kind of when that worked out for me. And then the Marvel events of the 2000s were happening. I don't know a lot that I didn't like, to be completely honest. Like the major ones, like Civil War and House of M, like all those ones from the mid 2000s or whatnot. I mean, I'm on board.
I hear you. So, Benjamin, let's go ahead. We'll get to the list here. You go ahead and read them.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to tell me one that I missed, because like I said, this is probably not a complete comprehensive list. So if anybody wants to shout at me that I missed one, feel free once I get to this. In no particular order, we have Daredevil, we have Ultimate Spider-Man, which he wrote, more, in one form or another for the full 17 years he was at Marvel. Powers, Avengers, including Avengers, New Avengers, Mighty Avengers, X-Men, including all new and uncanny X-Men, Alias, Secret Wars, the not the most recent one, the one before that not as many people remember, House of M, Secret Invasion, Iron Man, believe International Iron Man was the side one that he also did with Alex Maleev. He did Spider-Woman, Electro, which not too many people remember, Moon Knight, The Pulse, Spider-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, Marvel Generations. He co-wrote Ultimate Fantastic Four for the first story arc with Mark Millar and Illuminati. If I left any off, anybody wants to let me know, go right ahead.
He did the infamous Iron Man. It was only 12 issues that ended here recently, which I was very disappointed in the ending on, but overall was really, really good. He did the Old Man Logan series from that bullshit War Zones they did on Battle World.
Battle Wars, Battle World.
He did the Age of Ultron series event in 2012. He wrote 3 or 4 of the Avengers versus X-Men individual issues from that. He did the I don't know if this was the entire run and they canceled it or if this was just the front end of it, but whenever they started Moon Knight back up again in 2012, him and Alex Maleev did that for the first 12 issues. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of everything. And like there was only a few issues of like different Spider-Woman books, but he brought her like huge to the forefront in Secret Invasion, I think it was.
I remember that twist.
Well, yeah, Bendis was the big reason that Spider-Woman came back from the 80s because like that specific version of Spider-Woman came up in the 80s and just kind of drifted on into history and never really did anything again. And then she ended up, he brought her back in some Avengers book or whatever. That's kind of she's been a relatively main player since.
That's kind of the story of Bendis. Bendis has very obvious pet characters, and sometimes that works out really well because he can get, he's very good at writing them, and sometimes it's a little too obvious to the point where it kind of gets in the way.
Okay. Well, of those stories, Ronnie Adams, you first. What one stands out to you that you were like, okay, that was a great story that I had the opportunity to read?
I would have to say his run on Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
And House of M.
Oh yeah, House of M. That was a good one. Why don't you do me some justification about Guardians of the Galaxy?
It was such a fun book when he had it because these characters have a life of their own. It doesn't matter who it is. They have a not life of their own, a different feel to them when Bendis is writing. There's a little more life to them for me, and I dare say there's a lot more humor, that sarcastic wit that he brings to it. That's why he works so well with anything Spider-Man because he's got that wit.
Yeah, he mastered the Parker wit for sure.
Oh yeah. I'm struggling right now to remember the storyline's name for Guardians, but it started, I think, number 1 and went pretty far.
Wrote it whenever it revamped.
Yeah. So
it was like
Star-Lord.
It was 1 through 27 of that first one that he did, and then the next volume he wrote 1 through 19 with a couple different one-shot type things in the middle. So he basically wrote 45-ish. Yeah.
Did he take over prior to the movie?
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. So the one that we read, me, you, and Mark discussed was not Bendis. Correct?
It was not Bendis.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, and the iteration of that team, is it the same iteration of what we're used to, or was there people on there that know? Most people who haven't seen the movie would have no idea.
For the most part, it's what we're used to.
Okay. Cool. Benjamin, how about you? What's your? You see that list there, man? What do you think?
For me, it was of course it was Ultimate Spider-Man but also Daredevil because I have the entire run that Bendis did on Daredevil. Ultimate Spider-Man, I could go on and on and on about everything that I love about Ultimate Spider-Man, and I consider Bendis to be such an underrated Spider-Man writer because he almost exclusively wrote Ultimate Spider-Man, and people tend to kind of marginalize that, but they shouldn't because for a very long time, for a long period of time, it was either equally as good as the mainstream Amazing Spider-Man title, or in some cases much, much better. And in some cases it was the flagship Spider-Man book, and it was the most consistently good one. Like at one point, Bendis and Bagley were kicking out like 16 issues a year for a couple of years. Like they were
really churning those out.
They were so, because Bagley in the first place, like in his prime, like, you know, in the early 90s when he was on Amazing Spider-Man, he was doing bi-weekly. He was drawing books bi-weekly. Like he's always been super fast, and Bendis has always been super fast. So you get them together, and yeah, they'll give you 16 books a year. So it was just, you know, I would just devour, like, you know, every issue. And I think I have similar to that. I have like from issue 6 to like 114 straight across. And I've read most of the other ones. And just real quick on Daredevil, just some of the stuff that he did on Daredevil, because I think we were talking about Bendis's wheelhouse. This was, you know, taking, you know, all the Frank Miller like crime stuff that he introduced in Daredevil and just taking everything to like its logical conclusion. And he just put the character through so much hell. But it was so great, and it was just one thing after another. Like this is probably one of my favorite Daredevil stories ever. Was the last part of Hardcore, which is Daredevil. Like I think the technical numbering is like 430. It's the last part where after he gets the living crap kicked out of him for like 4 issues, he comes back and just stomps the Kingpin out. Beats him half to death, like sticks him on the hood of a car, drives it through one of the clubs that he owns, and basically like just tells everybody, like, if you know, this is your Kingpin and I beat him half to death, and now if you guys want a Kingpin, if you want somebody to run your lives from now on, it's me. I'm the Kingpin now. And that's how the story ends, and I freaking love it.
Wow. And
it deals with the aftermath of all of that too. Like, you know, just you think through, like, Bendis was also really good at like taking characters and putting them in these impossible situations, and then he keeps going. Like, he shows you the consequences. And it's just, it was just a roller coaster.
I can say that I've not had the opportunity to read him on any Daredevil, as far as I know. I'd have to go through and take a look. So maybe one of these days I can get back and check some of those issues out. All right, moving over to Josh. What, you got the list in front of you. Well, tell us what you think.
I'm going to kind of cop out on this one and also say Ultimate Spider-Man, just because, like I said earlier, I mean, it was the first thing that really got me back. It really got me into comics, I mean, not from the beginning, but as far as like an adult regular buyer. That was kind of the foundation for kind of where I'm at now and kind of regularly buying comics. And I don't have quite the run that Benjamin was talking about, but I had basically issue 10 up through 78, missing 1 or 2 here or there. And then I think is when I started moving around a lot for work. So I've got a bunch of gaps at that point, but I've got like between that volume and the second volume with Miles, I've got like 110 issues or something like that. But in addition to that, I'll also say his run on All New X-Men I liked a lot. A long time since I've regularly bought any X book, just because back in the 90s it was kind of all just I mean, I like those stories, but dude, you had to buy 7 different titles to get a story.
And they all had holograms on the cover.
Yeah, dude, I have every issue of that Fatal Attraction storyline.
Me too.
Yeah, but I mean, it kind of brought it back for me. I was like, well, Bendis is writing it, so I'll try this for a while. And I have like 50 issues of it, and it was really, that was the storyline where they brought the original X-Men into the present rather. And that's kind of where that started. But yeah, those are my 2.
And that whole, I read that All New X-Men, like I was saying earlier, about 15 issues into it, right from the beginning. And the concept to me kicked ass. You guys all know that I'm a time travel guy. You know, you throw that in as a plot device, I'm a big fan. And I know I've said that on this podcast a lot, but it was written pretty well. And there's still effects from that, from that happening still in the Marvel universe.
All those characters are still in the current modern timeline.
That's right. Again, that shows his influence, and the, you could write a character, and there were plenty of those. Speaking of the 90s, that were being thrown into titles. I'm looking at, was it Night Watch, Benjamin? Oh, geez.
Sweet.
Bringing that up.
But all these characters being thrown into a title or an iteration of a character or a spin on a character, and they don't last. They go to the wayside. Well, usually what you saw, what Bendis did is he took a character, and that if he brought a character into the fold, or if he took a certain take on a character, that stayed. And for better or for worse, because there's always going to be people out there that are going to grumble because of a change. Regardless, it's something that occurred and stuck in the continuity. It's not getting written off anytime soon. Well, depending upon, I don't know. I don't think there's any bad blood due to the announcement. I would hope not. But in regards to Marvel and DC and what they're going to do, I'd hate to see him go like old school WWE and bury some of the stuff that he did. We'll talk about that here in a few. But let me just go ahead. I want to ask you real quick, Josh, what made you pick up Ultimate Spider-Man?
I honestly don't even remember.
Okay.
Because it was kind of like I said, it was kind of my reintroduction to comics, and it was kind of me walking into a comic shop as an adult in college, aware of the fact that I now have the option to spend as much time as I want in a comic shop versus, like my parents taking me to Charleston or somewhere with a comic shop and be like, we got to go at some point.
Yeah.
Just kind of me roaming around. And I honestly, to be completely, think a lot of it just had to do with just the vibrancy of the cover art.
Okay.
Oh man.
Fun, lively, vibrant book at the beginning, and the art just really, really stood out.
I have an Ultimate Spider-Man story that's similar to that. I'm not sure if I've talked about it on the show at all, but it's a heartbreaking story.
Go ahead, tell us.
I remember, like I said, I have Ultimate Spider-Man starting with issue 6. So I missed that whole first 5 issues. It was actually Bagley's art because I, read Amazing Spider-Man in the earlier 90s that kind of drew me in. And once I saw that it was kind of going to stick around. But when Ultimate Spider-Man #1 came out, I remember very well that it came out because I was in my comic book. I'm in my local comic book shop. I had a copy of Ultimate Spider-Man #1 in my hand in the comic book shop.
Oh,
and I put it back on the shelf.
That's rough.
I put it back on the shelf because if you'll recall, I don't know if I'm the only one who feels this way, but Joe Quesada did the cover for Ultimate Spider-Man #1, and to this day, I still think it looks atrocious. I think it looks terrible. It's the one that's got the photo background of Times Square, but Spider-Man's head is for some reason is like half the size of the entire rest of his body.
I remember that.
Wasn't #2 kind of the same way? Like it was a photo of like a car or something.
The first 5 or 6 issues were like photo backgrounds. That's not the problem that I had with it. It was Quesada's part of that I had a problem with. What I'm trying to say here is the one time that I judged a book by its cover, Ultimate Spider-Man #1, I have been kicking myself in the ass about that for 17 years.
Yeah, that book's worth like $100.
I know.
Damn.
And I might have even had a chance to get the white cover of that too, which is worth even more.
Wow. Ronnie, back to you, man. Did you buy any Ultimate Spider-Man? Did you say you bought any?
Oh yeah. I loved Ultimate Spider-Man.
Was it after you found out Bendis was on it, or was it just something you did on a lark to pick it up?
It was just something I did because just like Josh, I'd been out of comic books for a while, and it seemed like a fresh start, something that I could pick up from the beginning. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to get #1 because it was sold out everywhere. I mean, it was gone.
That was back when Marvel had no reprint policy.
Yep.
And they didn't do reprints. That's why Ultimate Spider-Man ended up being so valuable.
Mm-hmm. I jumped on board a little late with that, but not late enough to not enjoy it. So, like I said, it was just a fresh start, something I could follow almost from the very beginning and not have to jump in the middle of a storyline or be careful where what I read, as far as get or have to deal with back issues, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to, I just wanted to just jump in and go for it.
I hear you.
And, the Ultimate line where they were restarting just seemed like that was the perfect opportunity for that. And I've always been a Spider-Man fan, so I was like, yeah, let's go here. And didn't regret it. Loved it.
All right, let's get to Miles Morales. All right, Ronnie, start us off.
Did not want to like him.
Oh,
Did not. Saw it as a cop out to because of Ultimatum and killing off Peter Parker and all this other. I was like, even though it's not like Peter Parker, it's the Ultimate version. I did not want to like him. Didn't want him to start over. I had all kinds of thoughts in my head about it, that were just stupid at the time. And then started reading it and fell in love with it. Just absolutely couldn't sing, higher praises about it because one, the writing was brilliant because it's Bendis, and two, it was just one of those things where I'm a stickler. I'm old school for certain characters. I didn't want Peter Parker to be dead, but later on, with Miles, it didn't matter to me because he's a freaking good character. That was one of those things where I just didn't want to, but liked it a lot.
Okay. I remember hearing what was going on I'm sure it was probably because I picked up a copy of Wizard magazine, but there was rumblings of what was going to happen. I don't know if Wizard was out of print there or not, but I remember there was some type of news. They're killing off Peter Parker. And I was like, what? Wait. And then of course I understood, reading deeper into it was the ultimate line of comics. But still, I was like, where were they going to go with this? So, Benjamin, you have the floor, sir. Miles Morales.
Okay. Right. This might get kind of real. First of all, yeah, I read I read Death of Spider-Man. Actually, I got the last issue. Once again, I have it in my hand. I got a bunch of comics that I threw out that I have, to kind of look at right now. And Death of Spider-Man just like rips your heart out, man.
Mm-hmm.
The way that it's pure Spider-Man. Spider-Man goes down swinging, standing is the only thing between him and like all of the people that he cares about. And just,
it was a hard read.
It really was.
If I'm going out, I'm taking you with me. And not only that, Bendis for, almost since the beginning of Ultimate Spider-Man did a really good job of making Norman Osborn and the type of Green Goblin that he turned into really legitimately terrifying. And even beyond Death of Spider-Man, he's really scary and like, this unkillable like monster. And it has a few shades of like Death of Superman where they both go down together. Basically, Miles, his origin is that he basically witnesses this. He's already been bitten by the spider and he's already got the powers, but he witnesses Peter's last stand supposedly, and it kind of affects him. Here's the thing. I've been a Spider-Man fan since I was like 6 or 7 years old. Like as long as I can remember. Spider-Man is one of my favorite, not just comic book characters, period. But here's the other thing. This is the big old elephant in the room, okay? Like, you guys don't know what I look like, but especially when I was a little kid, I looked a hell of a whole lot more like Miles Morales than I ever did like Peter Parker. So it's a very personal thing for me, and it means a lot to me to be able to show, kids that, that are kind of like that are Spider-Man fans, this kid that, he's half Latino and he's got the Spider-Man powers and he stands for the same things, and he can, he's somebody that, that is, that can be a hero too. And, that means a whole lot for me to see, to go to conventions and see, young kids like, that look like that cosplaying as Spider-Man and they're growing up now and that might be their Spider-Man. That doesn't mean that I don't, that I love Peter Parker as a character any less, but, it kind of matters, and it meant a great deal to me, to see that, even putting that aside, even if that wasn't the case, like he was saying, the stories were just, as good as ever. Like I said, Bendis's run on Ultimate Spider-Man, even into the Miles Morales years, were so consistently good. Like, I don't know how he did it for almost 20 years straight. It's kind of amazing. It was just one thing after another, one great story after another. And I'm looking at, when, spoiler, I guess, Ultimate Peter Parker actually, came back basically from the dead. And there's speculation that basically, that the experiment that created, the two Spider-Man plus the Green Goblin has made them all immortal and unkillable. And there's a couple of issues of Ultimate Spider-Man where it's basically just Peter and Miles versus the Green Goblin, and it's like like 2 or 3 issues of just this drag out fight. They both just put it on the line, and then Miles actually gets the best of the Green Goblin, and it's basically the best sort of passing the torch moment that you can ask for.
Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm. So obviously, personally, that's affected you. That's a lot.
I mean, for different reasons, I was actually on board from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But just because the way Peter's death was written, like we were saying before, like it was a rough read. Like it didn't feel like as you read the whole story, it didn't feel like a cheap ploy to sell books. Like it felt like a really important moment for the Ultimate Universe. As it went through, just like Benjamin was saying, like the passing of the torch was done really well. It had the same feel of a Spider-Man book without the Parker persona, but you kind of still had that beginnings of Spider-Man young teenager type feel. I mean, it was just a really well done, smooth trade-off. And I remember reading that Death of Peter issue and like sitting the book down and just like being super bummed, being like, that was a really well done story, and it didn't feel like they were doing it just to sell books, like whenever they killed Captain America a few years back, right?
Yeah,
because that Captain America thing made news and whatnot, and they were. Yeah, I mean, I liked Miles from the beginning and have been buying his regular title ever since then.
Mm-hmm. One of the things about the Ultimate line is that you didn't know what was going to happen a lot of times. You didn't know what was sticking around. I remember reading the Ultimates. I probably read the Ultimates before I read any Ultimate Spider-Man. I remember going like, oh my gosh, what is going on in this book? And I believe that was Mark Miller. We have the Hulk, who was just unfettered rage and just almost
8 people.
I mean, dude.
Yeah.
So that was one of the appealing part of the Ultimate line, was to be able to take things like this in a new direction. And Miles Morales became such a huge part of the Marvel Universe in general that when Secret Wars happened a few years back, Miles wasn't going anywhere. Mm-hmm. If they would have killed off Miles Morales there would have been riots. Oh, dude. Brian Michael Bendis
would have been so bummed. That would have made it feel like the entire Ultimate Universe was.
You'd been done with. You'd been done. Marvel. Yeah. Marvel Comics would have been what you wipe your rear end with. That's probably how it would have went, because that's bad. I mean, that would have been bad, but they didn't. They knew this was a character that they had an emotional attachment to Miles Morales. So
that death of Peter was such a good story that I bought it, and that was one that came in a bag, right? Like that was a death of bag book or whatever. So I bought that one and opened it and read it, and I was like, the bag. Like they totally got me with like the 90s ploy, dude. I was like, I'm gonna go buy a second one. like a sucker, but I went back and I've got one of each.
Nice. Very nice.
Just real quick, like if Bendis has an enduring like legacy in Marvel Comics, it'll be Jessica Jones and it'll be Miles Morales. It'll be characters that he introduced.
Yeah, absolutely.
The whole thing with the Ultimate line is, for me, it got dark. I mean, it got really dark. They introduced stuff that you would never think would be in Marvel Comics.
God, that third run on Ultimates.
They were hinting at incest between Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver.
Well, I had no idea. I'm reading the Secret Wars, and Reed Richards is a bad guy?
Yeah.
And I'm like, who's this guy?
I forget what they called him.
Fantastic Four book was not bad, though. That was I like it.
It wasn't.
It depends who was writing it.
Yeah.
Warren
is for sure.
On Ultimate Fantastic Four.
Well, you got Reed Richards as a bad guy. You've got the hinted incest between, brother and sister, the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, and then Ultimatum rolled around. It was. And then Ultimatum rolled around. They were like, we're just going to kill people to kill people. So they killed everyone. If even in the end, they just straight up murdered everybody.
Some really sadistic ways, too.
Yeah. Blob was eating the Wasp.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
Hank Pym in a fit of rage, bites the head off of the Blob, and he grew and bit the head off Blob, and just things like that. It was just sitting there going, "What am I reading? This is not good." And a lot of people had the same reaction that I did. I think I would hope, but. It seemed like that Miles Morales, Ultimate Spider-Man, all that was kind of a break from the dark. Was kind of a light in the darkness. It was lighthearted. It was still Spider-Man. He still had that feel, the humor, all the stuff of, okay, you can breathe a little bit. You don't have to worry about people's heads getting bitten off or brothers and sisters wanting to fall in love with one another. This is just Spider-Man. Even though it's not Peter Parker, it's still Spider-Man. No matter, it still has that feel.
It still has that the Spider-Man feel for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and it was a relief to me, at least. I don't know about anybody else, but I was just like, oh, thank God for this book, because
the first two volumes of the Ultimates,
terrible.
I like the first two volumes of the Ultimates.
Oh, absolutely.
But that third one is when the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver incest thing came in, and Loeb was writing it, and it was really bad.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Now the news hits, and we find out that Brian Michael Bendis is now going to DC. So now we have a lot of questions in our minds, a lot of excitement. I did put down here to maybe ask you guys as to if you've heard or if you have any theories as to why the change occurred. I'll start with you, Benjamin. Did you have any inkling as to why this occurred? It seems like it felt like out of the blue to me, but maybe to you guys it may have felt differently. But Benjamin, go ahead.
No, I'm as surprised as everybody else. I thought for sure, like, if there was going to be one guy that was going to be Marvel for life, it would be Bendis. I had no idea, and I'm hoping that there's no bad blood, and this is just something that Bendis kind of wants to get out of his system, because even now he's still got some irons in the oven as far as Marvel goes. I don't know if the Jessica Jones series that he started is still ongoing or if he's wrapping it up, but he had that. He was still doing the Miles Morales Spider-Man book, which I'm actually kind of really worried about now. Because literally nobody has written Miles Morales in a solo book ever except Brian Michael
Bendis. Yeah.
Wow. Except for Mark Waid has written him in a couple of in some issues of Avengers. That's about it. Very few people besides Bendis have written Miles Morales.
Well, even Waid doesn't quite get the humor and the whole Spider-Man feel.
Yeah, not exactly, which is a shame because actually Mark Waid is actually, as far as Peter Parker goes, he's actually a really good Spider-Man writer.
Yeah.
But, I'm not sure, your guess is as good as mine as to, why he decided. I mean, I'm hoping it's just, he just decided it's time for a change and he saw the opportunity and DC kind of took him while the getting was good.
Sure.
There was a lot of positive stuff from other Marvel people to him on Twitter, at least. Not to say he might have not,
Well, I think
higher up there at the end. I don't know, but
I think Bendis is generally a really well-liked guy in the business by everybody, anyways. So I don't think he's got any real enemies in the business. I don't
think he takes himself too seriously either.
Yeah.
He did a guest star on a book called Nailbiter for Image. And I was reading Nailbiter for a while, and he didn't write it. He was in it. He allowed his image, his name, everything to be used. As a comic book artist, it was trying to get inspiration for a new book he was writing. And he ended up, and Nailbiter is about this town that produces serial killers. Somebody always turns into a serial killer, and I didn't get to, it's still going to my knowledge. I only got so far into it before I hate to say this, I got bored with it, but Nailbiter refers to one of the main characters who was one of the killers that was caught, and he would kill them, and then he would chew the fingernails off his victims. Yeah, it was a pretty gruesome book. Yeah, it was a pretty gruesome book. But he allowed himself to be in the book and be murdered. So in that universe, there is no more Brian Michael Bendis because he was murdered by one of the serial killers in that town.
You know who wrote that, by the way? You know,
can't remember.
Because I know, like, I'm just wondering because I know for a fact, like, Bendis actually similarly wrote Warren Ellis into an issue of Powers. So
it was Warren Ellis.
It was Warren Ellis. There,
thank you.
Okay,
yes.
There you go. So
because
that was my first thought. Maybe it was Warren Ellis.
Yeah. But as soon as you said his name, So, I mean, I liked Nailbiter, but it kind of got to me after a little. I was like, I'm a little bored with it, and it's a little too, gross. But and I also had read the whole series of Hack Slash, so it was kind of more of that as well. But it was one of those things where I was like, this is really cool of Bendis to do that, but of course it didn't click that it was Warren Ellis too. It was just, like I said, I just don't think he takes himself too seriously, which is cool.
Well, do you have any theories there, Ronnie, as to why Bendis wouldn't maybe?
Man, I've been looking, Googling and looking at, Marvel's Twitter and everything else. And it doesn't seem like there's any bad blood. It just seems like maybe, like you all said, it's just something he wants to get out of his system. And you've been sitting at the same place for 20 years, writing the same characters, doing the same thing. While yes, he's doing a great job in writing storylines for the characters that we love and that we want to see going. He also is probably a fan himself and reads and sees these things, and says, I could do this and this and this with this character if I could. So if he showed some sort of interest, DC would be absolutely stupid not to pick him up.
Yeah.
And then, it's only Marvel's loss. It's Bendis and DC's gain, because one, he's going to get that exclusive deal with DC no matter what. And two, their sales are going to pick up because they have Brian Michael freaking Bendis on their payroll.
I mean, the momentum is all with DC right now.
It is.
Yeah, it really is.
In all the podcasts that we've done, I've talked a lot about how I'm always going to prefer Marvel stories because that's where the bulk of my reading has come from, and I'm more comfortable with that universe, and at least in the grand scheme of things, more comfortable with the fact that how it's compared to DC. But I'm telling you, there's some. I've been reading Tom King's run on Batman, and he was the one that wrote the Vision that I raved with you all about a 3 years ago.
Just finished it. So good,
yeah, so good. But I mean, his run on Batman's really good. I'm actually it's pretty much just Tom King fanboy, but he's writing Miracle Man right now, which again I have no history on, but in the grand scheme of the character, sounds like a really lame character, but it's a really good book. So yeah, I mean, if he can lend what he has, if he can do half for DC what he did for Marvel, then it's going to be really good for DC.
Oh,
books.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I know there's one book or at least one, dream book. And if I may, I don't know how familiar you are. I'm going to pose a question on here, Jesse, real quick.
Sure.
Because I know Calandris' answer. But if there's one book that you want to see from out of DC that you want to see Bendis take over, what would that be? Josh?
The first knee-jerk reaction for me is just a Justice Society book.
Mm-hmm.
Just
That's
because
where I
I
figured
really
you'd go.
missed that 2000s run, but at the same time, I feel like Bendis' strength kind of lies in an individual character's voice. Like I like some of his team books. I like that run on All New X-Men, but I don't know. I'd have to kind of. Oh man, if he could do Green Lantern, that would be really good too. I just now popped into my head, and I got the school, the kid in Christmas morning. I was like, oh,
You giggled a little. I'm not gonna lie.
oh.
Well, there was one lady that I was watching today who said that they need to keep him away from the Trinity. They need to keep him away from Batman. They need to keep him away from Superman. They need to keep him away from Wonder Woman.
Well, I don't know about that.
I mean,
if I'm DC, that's the last thing on my mind. I mean,
Right?
Well,
What about you, Benjamin? What book would you like to see him take over?
I honestly, I've wanted Brian Michael Bendis on a Batman book for years anyway. Like not just the Batman book, but I'm talking about like Detective Comics. Like that's his.
that would work really
That would
well.
work.
Talking about
yeah.
like art, like gritty detective Batman, like push that.
That noir detective stuff.
Yeah, just push that to his absolute limit. Get somebody. My dream, team on that would be Bendis with Sean Murphy drawing. Sean Murphy on art, who's doing a Batman White Knight right now, who is like one of my favorite artists working in comics right now, who can just do no wrong. But it's actually funny because Bendis has kind of always preferred. I think or at least at a certain point in his career, always preferred like lower key, like second tier characters that nobody else really cares about. That's kind of why he ended up with Daredevil, because it was a street level character that, was kind of maligned until like Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti brought him back up with Marvel Knights. I actually sat in on a panel that he gave at a convention a couple of years ago, and he joked, like, they always ask him, like, because he's a Marvel lifer, or so everybody thought. Mm-hmm. And they joked with him. They said, like, if you were to go to DC, this was a hypothetical thing at the time. If you were ever to go to DC, what book would you want to do? And a lot of people felt the same way I did. They were like, you got to do Batman. And he would joke. He's like, everybody wants me to go, do Batman at DC, but more likely I'd, end up on something like Plastic Man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he I think he would have some strength in like that Detective Comics format, but he would also pick out some character that has been hidden away for 15 or 20 years and would make them front and center for DC for a year and a half or something, and it would be awesome.
The last good
Bring back the Spectre.
The last good Plastic Man thing I ever read was the Furnace storyline in JLA with Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter, they couldn't beat him, so they needed somebody that had pure chaos in their mind, and that was Plastic Man. And then it was actually Batman's idea. So it was like, that's pretty cool.
Story? How old is that story?
It was probably early 2000s.
I swear I may have read that.
It was when he was, I can't remember the name of the character, but he was in love with this demon, and she got him over his fear of fire.
Yes, and
they realized that he needs that safeguard in his mind, otherwise he's going to be completely evil and completely unstoppable.
Oh, I think I swear I remember that. Benjamin, were you going to say something?
Realistically, like we can all say, speculate on like what we would like to see Bendis doing. I think realistically, in order for Bendis to have been like lured away to DC at all, I got to imagine they made him an offer he couldn't refuse, like one way or another. He may have agreed to like do a big name book immediately in order to maybe do some kind of dream project for them of some kind down the line. So I'm thinking like first and foremost, immediately, if he doesn't end up doing Batman, like or a Batman title, my first thought is like you're going to see him on Justice League. You're going to see him on Justice League just because, the movie's coming out. They may want to, bump up the sales of the comic. They need a hot hand, like somebody that's going to generate buzz. I'm thinking it'll either be Justice League or Teen Titans or maybe both. Like that's my first thought that like that's the first thing that he's going to go to.
He'd be so good on Teen Titans.
That's exactly what I'm
it would.
I know.
Oh my God.
Then after that, who knows? Because next year, Doomsday Clock is coming, and I'm not sure what is going to come of that. But that's a big event that I'm seeing TV commercials for Doomsday Clock, and I almost never see commercials promoting comic books.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a big deal next year for DC, and I'm wondering if they're bringing in Bendis to kind of help construct whatever is going to be in the aftermath.
Well,
Jesse?
Yeah. Man, I don't know.
Sorry, I just kind of took over your show. My bad.
No, dude, I'm perfectly fine with that. The one thing that would like to see Bendis on. I mean, you guys threw out some really, really great contenders, Teen Titans. And I wish I knew a lot about his strengths. I seriously watched a guy tonight. He did a 15, 20-minute video on just about the writing style and his opinion of the writing style of Brian Michael Bendis. One of the things that he mentioned in regards to his weaknesses were the fact that he does
none.
he does decompress story, and it seems like sometimes he'll throw in, when it comes to dialogue, he just kind of throws stuff in there that really has, you could be looking at a page that really doesn't further the story a whole lot, but it's very kind of like personal. So you get the feeling of a character, even though there may not be a whole lot of stuff going on in between the dialogue there. And I think that's one of the biggest criticisms that they weigh toward him. So what would have to happen is he's got to be, the book and the character that he gets on has to fit his writing style. I would hate to see him get stuck on something that he really is out of his element on.
Well, he's kind of at the level, he can pick and choose what he wants. Like, he's not going to sign with DC and they're going to be like, you're on this book and that's the only way it's going to be. Like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like he's done it. I don't really know that would be a problem.
That's true.
I mean, and actually, the more I sit here and think about it, like a Jim Corrigan, the Spectre book by Bendis would probably be awesome. A dead cop acting as host to the Spectre. I mean, that's
well,
that lines up well.
There was also a video, Ronnie. I don't know. I'm kind of dancing around it because to be honest, I don't know. I honestly don't know where he would fit on, but I can tell you this much. What I could see possibly happening, and this was so funny, one of the YouTube videos I watched today was from Sci-Fi, which I assume the logo looks different, but I assume it's Sci-Fi Channel, okay?
They rebrand every 3 years.
All right, anyway. Yeah, that's got to be what it is. So
they're leaning into the geek culture thing a little bit more now.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense because they did an interview with Brian Michael Bendis after a con, sat down with him, talked to him about some of the recent stuff he was doing with Marvel, and they dropped the video November 7th. All right, so they're asking all these Marvel questions, and this thing only has 630 some views. I'm sure it's because it's eclipsed by all this other stuff that happened on that very same day. But I wrote this down because I thought it was a very interesting quote. Because the interviewer was asking him about bringing the diversity to comics. So I think Bendis champions himself on that. He's very proud about the fact that he's able to do that with what he's done in Marvel. So you're not going to change the man just because the guy's changing the company. He's going to go over to DC, and we're going to see. I think we're going to see a lot of that because he's going to feel comfortable now, and he's got a whole new sandbox to play in. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I wrote down here, he says he likes adding voices and flavors to the toy box because he feels that that's his responsibility as a comic book creator. So don't be surprised if what we get over in DC is, more of, I don't want to say diversity, but more, additional things. I can't see him taking the reins of Justice League and then just keeping it Justice League without throwing a shakeup or two in there.
Well, I mean, he's been one of the primary people at the House of Ideas table, the 5 to 10 or 15 or however many of them meet in a cabin once a year to talk about the next year's big things. They're not bringing him on. You wouldn't want to bring Bendis on just to write 3 books for DC and have him do 3 different books. He's going to be helping lead that company.
Yeah, he's
right. You're not hiring Bendis to write 3 standalone books and then do events separate. He's going to be writing their big events, and he's going to be one of the however many people at the head of DC Comics decides the course of their overall feel.
One of the titles that he had at Marvel was he was an architect. I don't know if you guys ever heard him called that, but yeah, he was one of the architects of Marvel. And I assume this was when he was brought in to do the Ultimate line. Quesada coined him as one of the architects. So yeah, he had some power, and he had some great ideas. and they knew that. So
the last 15 or 20 years, that anything that you read about that people at Marvel would be able to talk about and how they create their stuff that's exactly what they do. Once every year or two, they'd get a handful of people that work for Marvel at some resort or a cabin or something, and they just sit and talk and kick around ideas. And if that's accurate and if that's true, then that just means that his ideas, everybody in the room was like, that sounds awesome. Let's have Scarlet Witch wipe away all the mutants. I mean, like, just that type of stuff kicked around. I mean, if that's as open and honest a process as it is, and DC adheres to anything remotely similar to that, there's going to be some solid stories coming, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're not going to pull somebody away that has that much stroke in a company. Your direct opposition and sales.
I think one of the things I will look forward to finding out over the years or decades or ever is I wonder how much Disney's ownership has played into this.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Because we're 2-3 years in?
Yeah.
How long has it been now?
Disney? Oh, no. It's been actually closer to like 7 or 8 years, I think.
No kidding. Dang.
I'm getting older.
I think it was around 2009 that Disney bought.
Yeah, no, you're right. 2009. Never mind.
Wow. I thought it was yesterday.
I wanted to throw something else out there, and this can go into both, Marvel and Bendis and Pending, like going to DC. Something that he was also really good at, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Villains.
Yeah.
Bendis had this really good talent, and it was underrated because he didn't always draw like tremendous attention to it. Bendis was actually good, like I said, he likes second tier characters, he likes second string characters. Bendis was really, really good every so often at taking almost joke characters or very like underrated and underused characters that and kind of accentuating like whatever abilities they had and really like presenting them as being super powerful and super terrifying. Like, I got a couple of really good examples. One was in the first arc of New Avengers, where he took Electro, who was never, even in Spider-Man, even when Stan Lee was writing Spider-Man, was never taken all that tremendously seriously. He was kind of like a glorified thug. And Bendis took Electro and basically had him orchestrate a prison break. This is the first time I think you also see the Raft, which is like the supervillain prison, like smack in the middle of, I think, the Hudson River in Manhattan.
You're talking to Avengers Disassembled, right?
Is that Avengers Disassembled? It was something like that. And the first time you see the Raft, which also pops up in Captain America Civil War, so that's another credit to something Bendis created. And Electro basically just, sends this gigantic bolt of lightning to crack the Raft open like an egg and just orchestrate a whole prison break. And you get this sense like this is this dude who was treated like a joke. Who just unleashed, But if you really think about it, this is somebody that commands, electricity and can do so much damage, and Bendis recognized that and made him into like a serious threat. He did something similar with Jigsaw in an arc of Daredevil, where like that he was the main villain in that, and just by some was just kind of outsmarted, but he was treated like a threat in that. The one that actually made it mainstream was Kilgrave.
Purple. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Kilgrave first appeared in 1964. He was an OG Daredevil villain.
I mean, he was literally called the Purple Man.
Literally called the Purple Man. Dude walked around with purple skin and a purple suit. But he took that and brought it into Alias and made him an antagonist for Jessica Jones, and you really, really caused you to think about, well, this guy has the power with where by his voice and by this, this virus or these pheromones that he carries or whatever you want to call it, whatever explanation you want to give, but he can make people do whatever he wants. And in the comic, that's brought to like its logical conclusion of that's incredibly scary, where you have no control over yourself. Anybody that's seen Jessica Jones on Netflix, and props to David Tennant too, but that's also brought to its logical conclusion where it's like, this is a terrifying person who actually is very much aware of the power that he has and will use it for his own, most of the time for his own amusement. and treat people like toys and have no regard for anybody's independence or anybody's control. Like, Bendis was really good at recognizing things like that should be taken seriously that maybe hadn't been before.
Now I'm going through my head and like thinking of DC villains that could either use a good resurrection or a nice shot in the arm for some potency. I mean, dude, that's going to be fun to watch. Without a doubt, I understand why it grabs the attention that it does from comic readers and, pop culture even, because of the effect that his creations and his influences had on comics, that Brian Michael Bendis has had on just anything that was Marvel related out there. Now we get to see it go over to DC. Ronnie, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I'm not a big DC fan. Very few books in DC have really caught my attention, but as much as I hate to say it, I probably will purchase anything that he writes in DC. Okay. And they'll be the first DC books that I've really, other than He-Man versus Thundercats, that I've bought in a long time.
Yep. Yeah, you see his name on a book. I mean, it's going to command attention now, especially on a DC book. So, yes, I don't blame you there.
I mean, last thing I wanted to say, like, I'm really bummed out for Marvel just because I'm kind of just a Marvel homer. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm excited for an additional reason to want to buy DC books. I mean, they've stuck with this iteration of the universe without resetting for 2 or 3 years now, which is pretty good given how the last decade or so went. So, I mean, there's starting to be some consistency that they seem to be sticking with. And I'm probably right there with Ronnie. Like, whatever book he's writing, I'm probably going to end up buying.
Okay. All right. Well, then we're going to start with you, Josh, because you just kind of mentioned it here. This last question. All right. Do you think Marvel's in trouble?
I wouldn't say they're in trouble, but I think that if there was a reason at Marvel that Bendis left, then they need to take a close look at what they're doing, because the books over the last 3 years there've been good books. It's not like they're all bad, but it's taken a hit since Secret Wars. I don't obviously know if that's a trend or something going on with the company and the structure and the organization and management, but if Bendis leaving has something to do with that, then yes. If not, and he's just interested to write for a whole new set of toys in a toy box, then probably not.
I think I'm thinking along the same lines as Josh. I don't think so. I don't think either company will ever really be quote unquote in trouble, but they do need to pick up their game. They've not really, in my opinion, their storylines have suffered since Secret War. So they need to realize that one of their biggest players is gone, and they need to really pump out some good ideas here as of late to make up for that.
Mm-hmm. All right, Benjamin, how about you? Marvel, should they be worried?
Worried in terms of, one of their golden boys just went over to the competition. Yeah, maybe a little bit. As far as their own products and their own, what they've got going on, I think it's actually probably a good opportunity for, some of the other guys, in Marvel's stable to kind of step up. And Marvel's still got some extremely talented people working for them. Mm-hmm. Chip Zdarsky's doing, Peter Parker over at Marvel. Dan Slott's still doing Amazing Spider-Man, which is
amazing.
Yeah, which he's about to come in on Amazing Spider-Man number 800, which is insane.
Wow.
I think only Stan has written more issues than he has now of Spider-Man. I think that's official. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like everybody else, Jason Latour is still doing Spider-Gwen. They've still got great, people working for him. And now it's funny because now they won't have Bendis doing 3 or 4 books a month. So maybe, now maybe some new blood will come in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe with that, some new ideas. The funny thing is a lot of the greatest creativity in comics right now is coming from Image and from creator-owned stuff and from independents. And now what you have is people doing their own thing and doing their own independent thing and kind of dabbling in Marvel and dabbling in the mainstream and dabbling in superhero comics. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, sometimes you get some really interesting creative people going in really interesting creative directions that way. is that going to kind of jibe with, Marvel being, a little bit more micromanaged by Disney than it, has been previously? I don't know. I'm hoping they find the balance, because one thing you can say, like pre-Disney, in the 2000s when Joe Quesada was running, running things, say what you want about Joe Quesada. Believe me, I've said plenty, but at least he had, in the 2000s, he had a plan. He had some objectives that he wanted to, get out there. He wanted to make Spider-Man top comic again. He wanted to bring Daredevil out of obscurity. He wanted to bring Fantastic Four back to its roots. He wanted to, make X-Men kind of the hot, controversial book again. This decade, there's been like a little less cohesion. Like it's been a little bit more all over the place as far as Marvel goes. Some things have been good. Some things have been great. Some things not so much. So I'm curious, Bendis leaving might kind of throw a monkey wrench into a lot of things, and maybe to make, a wrestling analogy, I guess, some of us I think are still wrestling fans. It's when you're kind of forced to, when your hand is forced, that you become the most creative. You've seen that in, WWE past, and that happens in a lot of companies. You get complacent when you get comfortable, and it's only when you lose that comfort that you kind of, your back's against the wall and you're forced to find new ways to succeed.
I agree. I think that it will be interesting to see how Marvel compensates for the loss of quite a big creative talent that they've relied upon for quite a while. We've seen a bit of a change here recently with the way Marvel is doing things. We're going back. Benjamin, you mentioned the legacy numbering, Amazing Spider-Man 800. They're going back to some of these characters because there was, quite the uproar about the big change and stuff like that. So they're in the midst of trying to find that balance to try and make everybody happy. I'm sure it doesn't make it easy to watch somebody like this go over to the competition, but that just means they've got to do something to figure out how to compete better. And if there's anything that can be said, competition makes the market that much stronger. So let's just hope it's a win-win for comic book fans altogether. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this has been our coverage of the breaking Brian Michael Bendis. As we'll get into plugs, let's see, you guys have anything else?
I don't have any plugs or anything, but Benjamin mentioned Chip Zdarsky, and I've sang his praises on some of our casts in the past before too. And something that I'm looking forward to that he's doing is Marvel's actually bringing back the old Marvel 2-in-1.
Oh,
and and Chip's going to be writing that, and it's going to be the Thing and the Human Torch book. And I'm really looking forward to that because I love Chip Zdarsky, and I think that the fact that Marvel doesn't have a Fantastic Four book is just as absurd, if not more so, than DC not having a JSA book. And if we can get some semblance of that, then I'm pumped for it. And if Chip's going to write it, then I'm all over it.
Heck yeah.
Just the usual stuff. As always, as ever, I write, draw, self-publish a comic called Soul Exodus. You can check it out. It's soulexo.com, facebook.com/soulexo, on Twitter @soulexocomic. I've got something new on my drawing table very soon. Every so often I'll throw something out on Twitter under the hashtag Heroes. I just registered a domain name today, heroesoneandall.com. So I've got something that I'm working on. I've got a script written, and I will be hopefully producing some new art very quickly in the new year. So and now that I've said that, now I have to make it happen. So
yes, it's official. Also, I want a quick plug, Sketchbook Saturdays, which always keeps me entertained by one Benjamin J. Cologne. What was the last one you did?
Last one was Hulk for World War Hulk, because
right.
Literally like a couple hours before I went to go see Thor Ragnarok, which I loved, by the way. And it was kind of insane. I'm on my fourth sketchbook, and I hadn't done like not one Hulk sketch, so it kind of works out that way. But yeah, that's, I always joke about, I joke in my head, like, anytime anybody just came out of October, and, October is usually Inktober for a lot of artists. Anytime anybody asks me, you doing anything for Inktober? I'm like, I don't need to do anything for Inktober. I've drawn something every Saturday for the past, 3 years.
Well, yes, that's right. That's the truth. And I don't know if I had the opportunity to thank you or not, but again, thanks for taking my suggestion for the boys over there at Back to the Future Minute.
Oh, that was a blast.
That was so cool.
And I also ended up doing something for those guys for dueling genre. So yeah,
no kidding, that's awesome.
Yeah, remember I did I did the trailer for Geek by Night, which while we're at it, check out Dueling Genre Productions and Geek by Night, because those guys are great. They do a great drama. And thanks for introducing me to them. Make friends through art, as always.
Ronnie, you got stuff going on over at Screaming Boy. I know you do. I know you do. It's been resurrected.
Shut up. Actually found 2 episodes that I had not released previously because of we had some computer problems and things like that. So it just released 2 episodes that we did in the past. One was for Here in My Car Week at the Radwich Podcast Network. Yeah.
Dang, that's a throwback.
Iconic movie cars, and you and I were on there, and Adam. And then we did Mystery Science Theater 3000, the new season. So we took a look at that, and it was me, Adam, and Josh that were Jesse, were you in on that? I can't remember.
I think I missed that one.
You did miss that one, even though you are credited for being on it.
I'll take it.
Yes, please do.
Make a cameo. I breathe at one point.
So we just released those 2 episodes. I think it was Wednesday. We put this. Today's Thursday, so it was yesterday morning we put those out. As we record this, and then we have a new one coming out tomorrow morning, which was we covered Stranger Things 2. It was basically Jesse and I gushing over this
poor Adam,
the show.
Adam in classic fashion. He has
not
watched it, and we spoiled it. We tried not to spoil it for him. I think he took his ear away.
He took his ear away. We're like, earmuffs, Adam. They were like, oh my gosh, it was so good. And then that will be released tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. And then check us out on any social media. Twitter is at Screamboy PR. Instagram is Screamboy Podcast. Facebook, just look us up on Screamboy Podcast. And then also this weekend, as we record this, which will be the November 10th through the 12th, I will be at New York. I'll be at the North Carolina Comic-Con Bull City, which is in Durham. Just checking it out and having some fun and doing some live updates, and lots of cool creators, lots of stuff going on. I mean, this is, I've never been to San Diego Comic-Con, so I don't know. I know it's madness there, but this one seems like it's turned out to be pretty cool. I know they have a free concert if you bought a weekend pass or a Friday pass tomorrow night. And then we have this Friday night. Saturday night, there is what they call Guardians of the Gala, which is pretty much a dance party. They're turning it into a club. So it's a cosplay dance party, which is going to be really cool to, check it out. And then, of course, your basic awesome Comic-Con stuff is going on. Artists, creators. Your host for the whole thing is DMC from Run DMC, because he's got a comic book coming out. And then the gentleman who played Deadshot in the Arrow series, can't remember his name, the actor. He's going to be there. A voice from Steven Universe is going to be there. That's one of their big people. And Rob Liefeld is making an appearance Saturday and Sunday. So I'm going to take his infamous giant-chested Captain America picture and see if he will sign it for me, depending on how much he's charging for signatures. So I just want to take it and have him look at it and say, no, I want you to sign this because I want you to realize what you've done.
He probably gets so much
crap.
Heat. Yeah, he gets so much heat. Somebody probably does that. Don't think you're unique, Ronnie Adams. I guarantee there's probably 3 other people in line.
I'm not thinking I'm unique at all, on this, because if and listen, I used to draw, I used to sketch, and back in the 90s, he had a big influence on how I drew, and just because back then it was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. But then I started looking at just different things about him, like he doesn't draw feet, and if he does, they're diamonds. fans. But listen, I may joke, I may give the man a hard time, but he is a creator. I'm not going to.
You should just roll with it. Be like, I love this. This is some of my favorite art.
Right, and that's
Like,
kind of what I was going to do.
Straight up honest and see if he's like, thanks.
Thanks. This is my favorite picture of Captain America ever. You could rest a drink on his pecs. But like I said, not to take anything away from the man, because he gave us two iconic characters, Deadpool and Cable, and he's a creator in his own right. So I'll never begrudge him that, because, he's doing things that I can't, even though I used to, I can no longer draw. So it's just the fact that the man has no concept of biology, which blows my mind. Just how the human body bends and works. But anyway, so he's going to be there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Like I said, as long as cell service cooperates with me, I will be doing live updates. If not, they'll be recorded and put up on Facebook. Hopefully get some cool little interviews. Richard Case is going to be there, who drew a lot of Doom Patrol and Sandman. So I'm pretty excited about that. I met him at Greensboro Comic-Con. He's a super nice guy. And I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head. It all went away. Oh, there's going to be they're having it all weekend. They're having movie viewings. Last Starfighter, Terminator, Ventures in Babysitting. Just a lot of Godzilla versus King Kong. A lot of classic movies that everybody loves. So those are going to be really cool. So it's going to be it's really big. I've not been to anything like this. When I went to Fayetteville Comic-Con, it was huge. It was a little overwhelming. Lou Ferrigno was there. A few other So it was really cool. So I've not really, I don't know what to expect with this one. So I'm pretty excited about it. So that's pretty much it for me right now. But so if you're listening to this live, I don't know if we have any live listeners, check it out this weekend. I'll be doing some live updates. If you're listening to this recorded, go to the Facebook, check out the live updates, check out the pictures. iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and the Radio Legend Broadcasting Network, which is where you can find the show. And I will shut up now.
All right. That sounds like it's going to be a fun weekend. I'll keep an eye out for the live Facebook videos if you throw them on up there.
Please do.
Well, okay. Just real quick, you can follow me at Stiznarchy on Twitter. Source Materials Twitter is at SourceMattCast. Go give the Rattlich and Broadcasting Network Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts that we have to offer. If you are listening to this live, today is the 9th of November. It's a Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday. Now we're smack dab in the middle of Thor week right here on the Rattlich and Broadcasting Network. And we didn't really have a show lined up for Friday, at least not one that Mark Rattlich had scheduled a year in advance, like he always does. But what I did do was I was like, hey, we kind of have a bit of a gap. So I talked to one Robert Winfrey, and I said, sir, will you allow me to go back 3 years and grab the Thor Everyone Loves a Bad Guy episode and put that on for Friday? So tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, you get a real treat. You get a dip into the archives worth. It was Robert Winfrey and Pat Mullen who discussed the villainy of Thor. So yeah, there's a lot of villains that happen in the Thor magazine or the Thor comics. So check that out. That was a
easy pop-all starter.
I can remember listening to that, and you will learn a lot. There was a lot that was learned. Plus, one of my favorite stories was mentioned, the God Butcher saga. Ooh. So yeah, check that out, and that'll be hopping on there tomorrow morning. I got it set to drop 8 a.m. And then yeah, that's about it. You can go back in the last week, this week, whatever week, Monday, the Monday of Thor week. How's that? The Monday of Thor week was where me and Mark Rattlich, real quick, easy digestible episode, ladies and gentlemen. It was no more than just a tad bit over 30 minutes where me and Mark Rattlich talked about Thor Disassembled, which was pretty much Ragnarok that occurred in Asgard. And Thor had to deal with it. I think it was a 6-issue miniseries that took place in 2004, 2005. Good story, because I'll tell you right now, I had the opportunity to read that and then watch the movie, and it was a bit of a primer. I kind of knew what was going on. I was like, oh, yeah, that's Surtur right there. I wouldn't have known Surtur from something. Look, I'm street-level starch. You throw me up in Asgard, I wouldn't know my butt from a hole in the ground. So I'm glad I had the opportunity to read that with Mark and talk about it. Learned a lot. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of Source Material. I want to thank Benjamin J. Colon. I want to thank Josh Calandris. I want to thank Ronnie Adams for coming on here. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Have a good one.